Hey, Jim Toscano here, and welcome to the Monday night live stream, Filling in the Grooves. Tonight we're doing something a little different, which I'll tell you about in just a moment. Just a little bit of schedule to bring you up to date on some things. So there's a lot of dates that are being scheduled at the moment, but I just want to tell you some of the people that are coming up on the show pretty soon. So we have Nate Morton from The Voice, the drummer from NBC's The Voice. We have Ralph Humphrey from Frank Zappa fame coming on. Ryan Brown from Dweezil Zappa's band coming on soon. And there's a very high likelihood that I will get Billy Cobham and Dom Famularo together on the show. We're working on that. So, and I'm only saying it because I have faith that it's all going to work out. So I've been on with Dom today talking, and we got Billy in the mix. So it's looking like that's going to happen. That'll be amazing to have Billy on the show. And as you know, recently I've had Liberty DeVito and Carmen Apice. All of these episodes are archived on my YouTube channel. So go over to the YouTube channel. If you look in the corner of the screen, that's my Linktree QR code. Just click that with your phone. It'll take you out to all my links. And then my mailing list QR code is right there. So click on that, get on the mailing list. You'll get updates on the schedule as they come out. And I do want to thank a few companies, ProLogic's practice pads and ProLogic's percussion, Offset pedals, Sabian cymbals, Blackmagic Designs for their beautiful switcher and monitors. And I also want to mention Vader. And I've been checking out a lot of Vader product lately. And I was out on the road playing with Roger for a few days, Roger Street Friedman, my songwriter compadre, and we were out playing, and I've been using a bunch of Vader product. And also, announcement, the Dom's pad sticks are out on Vader now. So with a beautiful 5-coat finish, and it's sugar maple. So Dom's pad sticks. And actually, these are going to be available on my website, and they're also available on domfamularo.com. So go there, get your Dom's pad sticks. I think they're like $20, and they're beautiful, and they're replacing the old. Nothing will be like the original Dom pad stick, Vic Verth pad stick, but I think these came super close, and yeah, so you'll be excited to get those. So get your Dom's pad sticks going. So tonight we're changing it up. We don't have a drummer on the show tonight. We've had basically drummers on for a really, really long time. And I think, I've had some bass players and songwriters on in the past, but we've kind of been on the drummer trek for a long time. So my guest tonight is a producer. He owns a studio, Vision Recording Studios, located in Connecticut, which was established in 2005, I believe. And he's done a lot of work with different recording artists. So he's an engineer, a producer, a studio owner. He's a course creator, and he's a musician. So he goes out and does some gigging. So that's awesome. And his name is Dave Vignola, and he has a great set of courses called, it's the Home Recording Made Easy series of courses, Compression Made Easy, EQ Made Easy, all these different courses, which I am a consumer of. I have bought those courses. I use those courses, so I love them. And I have my students using the courses because, well, it's easy. It makes it easy. So we're going to talk to Dave Vignola tonight. And by the way, you can some of his credits include Discovery Channel, Desert Car Kings, I believe. There's an indie film, Sasquatch Assault, which is about, I think it's about my grandmother and her history, or whatever. And then NBC's Inside Entertainment. You can visit his website, visionmixstudios.com and visionrecordingstudios.com. And without any further ado, my guest, Dave Vignola. There he is.
Hey, Jim, how are you? And by the way, I'll correct you. I can play drums. I'm not a drummer. I'm a guitar player, but I can play drums.
Well, you can play drums. And I actually saw, I think...
A little bit.
Yeah. I saw some clips, I think, of you talking about recording drums.
I can play enough to be dangerous.
Enough to be dangerous. Yeah, that's...
Yeah, you can play enough to be dangerous.
Yeah. And, me as a drummer, I know enough about recording to be dangerous, meaning that I can record drums and send it to my clients. I'm not a mix engineer. I am a recording person. So your stuff has come in really handy. It's really helped me a lot.
Great.
So what I kind of wanted to do is find out kind of about the man behind the whole thing. Like, so you and I have been talking because we're building a webinar together, and we're talking about possibly some future projects. So, but one thing I think people don't really know about is how did you get started, and what got you interested in sound, and what got you interested in having a studio?
Yeah, probably like a lot of folks. As I started playing in bands just like everybody else. So I was a guitar player in bands, and we played cover bands and original bands. And back in the I want to say somewhere in the early 90s. I don't know the exact time frame, but it's back around that time before you could really record at home, or before it was really mainstream where everyone had a recording studio at home. You went to your local studio in your town or in your city, and you'd book a 4-hour block. Back in those days, I think it was about $400 or $500 to book a 4-hour block, and your band would come in, and there would be an engineer there, and you would record your demo, and then you'd get that thing called a CD that I'm sure some of us remember, and you would give it out to all the clubs, and that's how you got gigs. That's how it was done when I was coming up. And so I spent a lot of time in different bands going into these demo studios, if you will. I just was infatuated by, what the band sounded like in the room when you were playing together. And then you go into the control room, and after just maybe a half an hour of them kind of fiddling around with the gear and the console and everything else, like you're listening back to the monitors. I was like, I can't even believe that's us playing. We can't possibly be that good, And that was kind of the bug that kind of bit me. And that's a common story with a lot of musicians, where I'm not a good enough musician to play at a pro level. I'm a good enough musician to knock around and play in cover bands and have a good time, but to make a living as a session musician or whatnot, that just wasn't in the cards for me. And I kind of liked the other side of the glass, as it were. And that's what kind of got me started in learning what is this whole recording thing? And then I became the guy who learned how to run the PA in the band. And then at that time, slowly digital mixers were coming out. So now you could record your band and, record your gig, which when I first started doing that, you couldn't just plug in a digital mixer and hit one button and record multi-track. It was it was 2 carloads full of equipment that had to come with you to do those kinds of things. But I love that because I always wanted to have some historical document, if you will, of the band that I was playing in. So, and I've always done that from the time I was in my first band all the way up until 6 months ago. I have recordings of everything I've ever played in, because I figured one day I'm going to be old and gray and sitting in an old folks home somewhere. And I want to be able to look back and show my kids and maybe hopefully my grandkids, hey, your dad and granddad used to be cool.
Yeah. Here, listen to this, kids.
Yeah. So once I learned how to start recording things live, it was just like, wow, this is so much fun, and that kind of started the journey. And then, home recording equipment became more affordable. The technology became cheaper for the consumer. And it just started this snowball, and
now,
it just,
I have to interrupt for 1 second, because so what you said was, remember those things called CDs, right?
Yeah.
So now for me, thinking back on my first experiences with being recorded, yes, we were going to the studio in our town in Brooklyn, actually, but there was no CD at the time, so we were getting. If we were lucky, we were getting cassettes.
Yeah.
And if we recorded it and they gave us the actual recording, they were handing us a 2-inch master, or occasionally like a smaller reel. I think it was like a 1-inch reel that they would bounce down to a smaller machine, and they would give you that. And I still have some of those from bands that I played with in junior high and high school with those big tapes. And we got cassettes. Mm-hmm. And so what's kind of funny is, for me, when we were like, hey, let's try experimenting with recording, my dad had a 2-track reel-to-reel, like a Kai or a Tayak 2-track reel-to-reel. And I remember recording, I had a vibraphone and a Moog synthesizer. And I did a vibraphone part with a Moog synthesizer on the second track. And I had to try to bounce that down to 1 using a 2-track machine. And then it was the cassette 4-track recorders.
Yes.
So I had one of those Tascam 4-track cassette recorders. So you kind of like came into it after that technology was probably heading into the digital realm, correct?
Well, yeah, I had a Tascam 4-track called the Porta Studio. I still remember it. It was called the Tascam 414 Porta Studio. It was a little cassette that you would stick in, and you'd have 4 tracks.
Yeah.
That was my first home recording rig.
Me too.
That was my first one. But yeah, right around where cassette was kind of going out and CD recording on CDs were becoming the thing and recording digitally. I don't remember. Well, I do remember in the studio they had a what would be now known as Pro Tools, but was a very
Right.
early version of digital recording. But when I recorded in those studios as you, it was all analog. It was a big console. It wasn't a guy with a computer at a desk. It was a big console, but you recorded digitally. Everything was mixed in down through a console and analog equipment.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was kind of right around as things were starting to change is when I really started to get into it.
You know, it's funny. I work with, I mentioned earlier, Roger Street Friedman is a songwriter that I work with on a regular basis, and we're about to do his fourth record. And actually, so a little announcement: Larry Campbell once again is going to be producing. He produced our last album. He's producing the next one. And what Roger does is he has, yes, a Pro Tools rig. He has a massive SSL board, and he's got Pro Tools, but he sends it out to a 2-inch Sony tape machine and does a tape link. So he goes out to the tape machine and then back into the digital. So I guess the theory is that it warms it up going through the tape machine, comes back into digital, and that's how we do the recordings. And it's a pretty daunting process. There's a lot of moving parts, as you know, and we're going to get into this a little more later because I'm still working on your story. But you just got a beautiful new SSL board that we're going to talk about, and so congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going backwards. Yeah, instead of going forward with technology, I'm taking 15 steps
heading back. Yeah,
right.
And the reason being, and we'll get into this more, is it's just one thing. It's fun, the whole tactical mixer thing, and it's just another workflow. I think it brings a certain excitement and also the sound, of course, of running through those pre's, right? And we're going to talk about those pre's. But so now was your start sort of, was that high school? Was that junior high? Like, when did you really start experimenting with recording? Were you pretty early on that, or? Yeah,
it was high school. It was probably in my senior year. So we're talking about 1986, 87 is where and then that's when I started playing music, probably probably around 1985, 86. I would have been like a sophomore in high school, and I graduated in 87. And then, that's right around the time I was playing in bands, then going into studios. And right around that late 80s, early 90s is where I started to, learn about recording and what all that meant on the audio side. And then learning PA systems. And because I was the guy in the band that ran the PA because nobody knew how to do it.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted to know how to do it. And again, back in those days, it was big analog consoles. It was, 18-inch subwoofer cabinets. I mean, it was literally a trailer that we purchased as a band, which I'm sure you did as well, towing on the back of our pickup, loaded with gear.
Yeah.
I mean, it would take 3 hours to set up a show and tear it down. Where now today you can walk almost with everything in each, one arm have your little PA and one arm have a guitar and an amplifier and you're ready to perform. Yeah. It's a different world today. But yeah, I was back in right around that late 80s, early 90s is where I really started to get involved in it, starting with live sound and then again moving more into the studio stuff.
We're kind of paralleled with that because, I graduated high school in 85. So around probably 83, 84, I'm in sophomore year, junior year, somewhere around there. We were renting a U-Haul trailer to move our gear because there was the gear was so big. It's like, my bass player would say, "Hey, I'm going to drop my bass amp off at your house," and it was taller than me. It was this humongous, like, 15 stack of 15s with a head, right? These giant things. Now it's really funny. Like my bass player, Matt Schneider, he's got these beautiful cabinets that are really small but really powerful. They're light as a feather. You just pick them up like this. You just pick up 2 of them easily, and the head is super light. It's like amazing how they've made the gear so much, I mean, with everything, right? All technology, smaller, more portable, even drum gear now, they have like this carbon, drum gear that's like hardware that you just pick up a whole bag of hardware with one hand, it's crazy.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing the way the technology has improved in that respect. And back then you didn't even think it was a big deal to lug around an 8x10 bass cabinet that was 300 pounds. It's like, well, you didn't think, well, gee, this is it was like, that's what you did. That's what everybody did.
I'm a drummer. I know.
Yeah.
When I was playing like L'Amour in Brooklyn, which was a big heavy metal club. I was playing in a metal band in high school, original metal, and my mom's poor little Datsun 210, I would have to drive my massive double bass kit to the clubs in her little tiny car. She would drop me off because I was 16. I wasn't allowed to drive yet. She'd drop me off at the venue with all my drums. I'd load them into the club, and then after our set, I'd be standing outside with all my drums waiting for mom to pick me up. But, you know, as a drummer, we never considered like, oh, let's scale it down. You know, I brought as many drums as I could to gigs when I was a kid. Now, I mean, you know, I have a mini kit. You know, it's so tiny, I throw it in the back of my truck.
Right.
But yeah. So we were kind of on a similar trajectory. It's kind of interesting. And so when was it kind of that you started saying, okay, this could be potentially a business for me to start doing sound or recording? You know, how did that wind up becoming more of like the light bulb going, oh, I could make money doing this?
Yeah, it started with live sound because I learned the PA and I started running sound for our bands. And after about a year or so, we would work with a lot of other acts. Like people would open for us or we would open for people, and they always wanted to use our PA because we were the only local band that had a decent PA.
Right.
I would research all the gear and go to Sam Ash and talk to all the guys, and we try to get good stuff. And after a while, people would say, wow, you know, especially the club owners, everyone that's played live in a club knows that every single, especially if you're playing in a rock, a hard rock, or a loud kind of music, every club owner tells you the band's too loud, turn down. Every single person. And a lot of that has to do with, well, one, the guitar player always is too loud. And two, if you're miking up drums and everything through a PA, the person running the PA thinks louder is just better, where it's ear splitting.
Yeah.
To where I've always was like, no, man, you should be able to stand 5 feet in front of the band and should be able to stand to someone next to you and not have to have your ears feel like they're bleeding. It should be loud and powerful and energetic, but a lot of that has to do with EQ in the room and such, but it should be pleasing. And a lot of club owners used to say to me, wow, I can't believe how good the band sounds from a volume perspective. I would never be told to turn down. And then other bands started saying, wow, the band sounds really good. The mix sounds great. What are you doing? And I was just learning trial by fire. I didn't know what I was doing. I was figuring out as I was going. And so I started to mix sound with other people would hire me to come run their live sound. That's what I did at first. And make, sometimes I would do it for free for friends. And then I started charging a little bit of money. And then once, digital boards became where you could record stuff live fairly easily, where it wasn't 2 trailers full of gear to do that. I started to record our band's gigs, and then other bands would say, what do you mean you recorded your show? I was like, yeah, look, I got the CD and, can you record our bands? And that's how it kind of started. And I started to say, wow, I can make a few bucks on this. And I just make a few bucks on the weekend so I could buy more gear. That was just enough to support the habit, so my credit card wasn't, wasn't in flames. And that's kind of how it started. That was long before I ever thought there would be a home recording studio, or especially not education and teaching, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But that's when it kind of went off like, wow, people told me I was good at it. I didn't know that I was good at it. I was just having fun. And I went, yeah, it sounds pretty good. I mean, pretty good's a relative, subjective term, but I was the only one in the area at the time that could record a band live and have something to hand them the next day. No, but you weren't. That was very uncommon unless you hired a sound company to come out and do it. And when you're playing in local bands, you're lucky if you're playing for beer money, let alone can you pay someone $500 or $600 to come record your band.
Yeah.
Musicians, when you're in high school or in your 20s, you don't have any money to do that. You barely have enough money to get to the gig. So because I was able to do that, people would start to hire me. Yeah. And I started to get a reputation as like the live sound guy, where I would come with my PA, and I was doing live sound for a long time.
Did you actually ever have a house gig at a club where you were the sound guy for the house?
Yes. Yeah, I did. That was kind of at the end of my live sound career, as it were. I was the sound guy at a couple of clubs here in Connecticut. And it was okay. But at that point in my life, I was married at that point. My daughter was just born, and getting home at 4 a.m. was starting to wear on me a little bit, even though, especially because I wasn't playing in the gig. That would have been one thing if it was my gig, but I'm running sound for somebody else. And so, I did that for a while. I actually was a house guy for a while, where they had really great setups and everything was all set up, and I just had to mic everything up and go.
Yeah.
And then some national, I worked at a club in called Bleachers in Bristol, where a lot of national acts came through. And so once I did a couple of shows, a lot of national acts would start to ask me, they would request me to do their sound.
Right.
Because by that point, I knew how to make it sound good in the room where the audience could dance and enjoy the music without walking out with a splitting headache and not, pissing off the bar owners because you're too stinking loud.
Yeah.
Where you can't, how it is when you're playing, one person can't hear themselves, so they turn up. So then the next guy's got to turn up,
Yeah.
and then the singer's got to turn up, and then everything's feeding back, and there's no balance in the room. And so totally. I was able to get that dialed in to where bands would say, hey man, I want Dave to run our sound because the audience says it's good. And if the audience enjoys it, more people are coming to the club and the band's making more money.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's how I kind of ended my live sound.
I always feel bad for the sound men. Well, first of all, so like I just played in the Midwest, right? So we did a few shows at Gibson Music Hall and then a couple of other smaller venues on the Strip. It was called the Mile of Music Festival. And everyone had a different sound guy. And, it's not an easy job to have band after band come in, reset them, re-mic them, which guitar player's too freaking loud. So I always try to be super respectful of the sound man. First of all, never piss off the sound guy, right?
That's right.
Like, especially when he's doing your monitor mixes, don't go pissing him off.
Right.
It's just the same thing with, like, if you go to a restaurant, don't piss off any of the staff that is going to serve you your food. Same thing with sound people. Don't piss off the sound man because you can have he'll go, yeah, we got you. And then throughout the night, why is my monitor feeding back? How come there's no guitar in my monitor? So I'm always super respectful of the sound man because I know it's a difficult job. And as a drummer, there's a lot of drummers that just don't have any respect for, sort of respecting the auditory space, so when I'm on stage, I don't hit anything unless he asks me to hit something.
Right.
So I'm not sitting there noodling and doing my licks. I just sit there and I wait. Okay, kick. Boom, give him the kick drum. Do you want drums in your monitor? No, that's fine. Just give me a little guitar, some vocal. I try to be super respectful. So I have a lot of respect for anybody that does live sound. It's not easy. And, absolutely you guys deserve a round of applause.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing. And I think it just being a musician myself, I understood what they kind of went through. And when I got on the other side of the board, I could understand the musician's point of view as well. Yeah. I know what it's like to not be able to hear myself on stage because the sound guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And there is nothing worse as a performer that if you can't hear yourself on stage.
Totally.
And back in the days before there were in-ears and all those kinds of things where you did everything with stage wedges, it was real important that you had the mix right on stage or the performance is not there.
That's right.
Especially with singers, especially. And so, and also getting into live sound, because I played enough gigs where other people were doing our sound for us with different PA systems and we couldn't hear ourselves, that I said, I'll never play in a band again where I don't have control of the PA system and I don't run the sound. I'll never do it again. It's a lot more work, but as you know, when you play it at a level where you have good monitor mixes and you could hear everything, you play so much better and it's such a much more enjoyable experience. So I understood that from a musician's point of view. So I knew what all the musicians wanted to hear. And I understood how it could frustrate them if they couldn't hear. So that's always a good thing being a musician. A lot of times sound people are not really musicians or they're not gigging musicians. So they maybe don't quite understand that, but the good ones are, and they know. Yeah. And so it's,
Yeah. And we know right away when it's a very experienced sound guy and when it's not. Like we've been going out with a 4-channel wireless in-ear system.
Yeah.
And we had one venue where the sound guy was just like, huh? Like, what do I do with that? And we were like, it's not going to be a good night. But when you get somebody that understands it, and then the other beautiful thing about in-ear systems is that the wedges are not on stage at all.
That's right.
So now your stage volume is way more controlled. And I think as a result, the band stage volume is better. It's not so loud. You don't have the wedges feeding back into microphones and going back into the system. So, yeah, so it's really great when you have people that are experienced that are doing the right thing. So the live thing aside, so then you kind of went from there into sort of the home recording thing right from the live sound thing, or
Yeah, I mean, more or less, again, for myself as a musician, once, computers and recording and all that stuff became more affordable, I had just a Dell PC at the time with,
yeah,
at that time, whatever the version, I think it was Pro Tools 6 or 5, I forget, but the
yeah,
early version of Pro Tools, and a little 2-channel interface, and, bought it from my local Guitar Center. And that's how I kind of started, because at that point I was starting to get into original music. And so I wanted to
okay,
write and record, and doing it on the 4-track, the little Porta Studio, was cool. But now, once computer recording became something, and you saw the possibilities of the editing and the unlimited tracks, and all
yeah,
the things that are great about digital, I just bought myself a little rig and started to learn how to do it. And that was in the infancy of YouTube and videos and watching things and learning from books. And I really taught myself how to do it, is really how it kind of started.
right,
I knew how to do it live. So going to a computer and stuff, it's a lot of the same principles. It's just trying to get all the gear hooked up so it works properly,
yeah.
And in those days, you think people complain about certain DAWs and computers crashing today. You have no
Oh my
idea if you
God,
didn't do that in the 90s.
yeah.
I mean, you spent more time restarting the computer than you did recording, with the computer.
Oh my God, I had the same thing. I started with a Dell X something, like the most powerful Dell. It was really expensive. The most powerful Dell that they had, and I had the Digio 2
Yeah,
with
that's it.
an early Pro Tools system that
Yep.
I eventually added like a Presonus Digimax to get another 8 channels so I could mic up more drums.
Yeah,
And I
as a
was
drummer.
using that
Yeah.
thing, and the Dell kept just falling apart. And then
Yeah.
I bought one of those Guitar Center PCs, the one that like had the handles and the doors, and you mounted it in a rack. It was a
Yeah.
rack mounted PC. That
Yeah.
thing bit the dust like so many times. I kept having to mail it to California to get it fixed. And finally, my buddy Vincent LaRussa, maybe he's in here tonight, who was a student of mine at the time, was like, "Dude, you have to get a Mac." And I remember buying my first Mac Pro. It was like $3,600. It's
Yeah.
under my desk right now. It's the size of a suitcase.
Mhm.
And that was the way I was following a similar path as you. Did you have that Digio too?
I did have the Digio too, yeah. And that was expensive. I mean, again, we talk about always becoming affordable. Today's standards, it's affordable. Back then, it was still thousands of dollars,
Yeah.
and we're talking about 20 something years ago. Thousands of dollars now is a lot of money, but thousands of dollars then.
Yeah.
It was a Digio 2. It was a Dell PC. I went to the Mac Pro. I still have my old Mac Pro. It's from like 2006 or
Is
5.
is it
No,
running? Is it
it's like 40. It runs. I don't use it. It
oh,
physically works. It looks brand new. And so it's probably probably a collector's item at this point. I don't know. But yeah, it was like a $4,500 computer that, I financed that up for like 4 years or something,
yeah.
because back in those days, I wasn't making any money. $4,500 might as well have been a car,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Totally.
so, yeah, I started with all that. What today is antiquated gear, but then was cutting technology.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. I remember like the extra 8 channels cost me $900
Right.
for that channel strip. Now you can get a channel strip for like half that.
Sure.
That sounds just as good, but it's like everything was super expensive at the time. And I remember I got a 32 channel Mackie mixing board, just a huge live mixing board basically, and a patch bay. And I was like, I'm going to run everything through the mixing board and then send it to the interface. And I was trying to do it that way. I was like going backwards while going forward, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't like an SSL board. It was like this big old Mackie mixer,
Yeah.
which eventually I just was like, what am I doing? Like I'm mixing everything in the box. Why do I have this 32 channel board, which wouldn't
Right.
even fit in this room right now? You know what I think we should do, because we're kind of like at that halfway spot. Let's check in the chat and we'll say hello to some folks, and then after that, I want to dig into kind of how it goes from home recording studio to knowledge worker, we can call it, or you
I
know,
like that.
course creator, right? Basically selling knowledge on the internet. But
Knowledge. I like that. That makes me sound important.
it does,
Knowledge.
right?
Yeah,
Knowledge worker.
I like that.
It's like when we call my garbage guy the garbologist.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So and I knew that the first person saying hello in the chat would be my young student Lucia Rose Seminara, who is a drummer and a bass player and a guitarist and a piano player. Like, she's a multi-instrumentalist. She's
Wow.
only 12 years old. She's going to be 13 soon. Kid is super talented, plays the drums really great, and longtime student of mine. And she's in my Zoom workshops every Thursday night. We do a live hand technique workshop. She's always in there. So welcome, Lucia. And she was just saying hi so far to you and I. So there she is. Bob Sears is here. I told you about Bob Sears. So greetings to Jim and Uncle Dave. We'll see if we have questions coming from the Bob Sears camp. Verbus Diablo, as always, in here on Twitch. Lucia said she's very excited about the pad sticks. I know everybody's excited that we're going back to the beginning of the chat. Oh yeah, and Bob's got his pad sticks. John Gill, there he is. He's got pad sticks. Oh my God. He said that he's looking forward to the webinar on 8/27 next Friday, which is indeed next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Make sure we get the time zone right. However, just know that if you miss it, it will be available. And there's some great bonus content that we'll talk about a little bit later. Don O'Keefe saying Porta Studio. Yeah, you had the Porta Studio back in the day. Firestone Rocks Drums. What's up? It's Scott Firestone on Twitch. Good to see you on Twitch. Wow, I can't believe you're on Twitch. Everybody's usually over on Facebook. I'm always like, are the Twitch people just messing with us, or because they're mostly gamers? So I've done the thing where, like, I'm talking about shuffles and doing like a drum presentation, and they're going, play Iron Maiden, and I'm like, no, it's not an Iron Maiden night. Don O'Keefe said a good sound man is always a pleasure to work with, makes the night so much more enjoyable. Of course, that is true. I used to go make soup waiting for my Mac Classic to boot up. Yeah, well, you know, the original Macs, it took a little bit longer, right? But it was worse with the PCs for sure, right?
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Yeah. I always tell people, I'm like, what kind of system are you using? Oh, a PC? Do me a favor. Do you have a swimming pool?
Yeah.
Okay, go throw the PC in the swimming pool and get yourself a Mac, because it's going to make your life a lot easier. Okay, we got a question. John Gill, Jim and David, can you tell us the topics for the recording webinar next Friday? Yeah, I'll leave it to you, Dave. What do we have for the topics?
Well, the main topic is it's really kind of twofold, right? So the first half of the webinar, if you will, is going to be Jim showing you and showing everyone how to mic up drums, set up drums, get good raw drum recordings in a very kind of a simplistic way. So you don't have to have a big recording studio. You could do this in your basement or your spare bedroom or whatever, with whatever gear that you have. How to get good sounds, talk about drum heads and tuning and all the things you need to really get a good raw recording of a drum sound. And then part two with that is where I take those raw sounds and I've already kind of pre-mixed those to show you how you can mix those in any digital audio workstation using only the plugins that come with your particular system. You don't need nothing fancy. And how to take those raw sounds and how to do some basic EQ and compression and simplify it down to where you can get a really good, great sounding drum recording, you know, and then how it kind of sits with bass and keyboards and piano, the track that Jim provided. So you can hear the drums, you know, soloed up and how they sound, but then how do they also sound in the context of other musicians in a full track?
Absolutely.
So I think those are the two basic things. And then I'm sure there'll be questions and answers and all kinds of stuff there too. But those are the two main things. So recording and mixing. Yeah. So it's kind of a fully, you know, planned out recording and mixing drum course.
Yeah. And we're also going to address getting your DAW set up, because for anybody that's just starting, getting yourself, especially as drummers, I find that templating for your particular drum kit is going to save you a lot of time. And we can show you pretty quickly how to set up in your DAW a quick template of your inputs that gets saved. So every time you pull up, because as drummers, we're not usually, for our home drum kit, we're not changing things around that much. We'll change out a snare drum, change out a ride cymbal, but our core kit is usually set up the same. So once we get the mic set and we get that template built, you're ready to just hit record every time you walk into your room. You don't want to be sitting there going like, let me run the mics and what input
Yeah.
was that again? You want to have your input saved. And so if we get from the audio setup and the general preferences kind of setup, you can just do it quickly, and that's what you want. You don't want to go through this every single time. So that's something we're going to help you with as well. So that's kind of what we're going with there, John. So and of course we're going to take questions. So if you have specific questions, we're going to try to get to those. And as Dave said, there's also a pre-recorded mixing component to this. So you're going to get this bonus 45-minute or so video, right? Of
Yeah, I think it's a little over an hour, maybe. Yeah,
over an hour
something
of
like that, yeah.
of Dave mixing a drum track that I had to do recently for a client. So we're gonna provide that as well. So Lucia was saying, yes, I play multiple instruments and I'm looking to start recording from home. What starter equipment do you suggest? And I always go to budget friendly, Focusrite interfaces. 18i20 is a great unit that gives you 8 channels of audio at an affordable price, that has a great little control piece of software that's very simple. I teach it all the time. Would you agree that something along those lines, Dave, would be a great starter
Yeah,
interface?
absolutely. You don't need a ton of gear. You don't need an SSL console to do recording at home simply. Right. Today, the gear is made so well in an affordable price. So something like the Focusrite, if you're a drummer, you want something probably with 8 inputs on it, a few $100, and then whatever digital audio workstation you're comfortable with. It doesn't matter which one it is. It could be Logic, Pro Tools, Cubase, Studio One. It really doesn't matter. And that's all you really need to get started. That and just whatever plugins and stuff come with your DAW. I tell everyone that starts off, that's all you need. Don't go on YouTube and watch all the videos of all the fancy plugins and stuff. And my channel included. I do a lot of that for demonstration purposes, but you don't need that when you first get started. Start simple.
Right.
Start simple.
And, something to mention here is that Dave's got these great courses on compression and EQ, and very, very simply laid out, that explain with just stock plugins. He'll do a comparison of maybe 1 or 2 other ones, but generally taking a stock plugin, if you don't know what a plugin is, it's an audio component that normally in the past would have been an actual piece of hardware, and now it's a software component that actually can affect the sound. So if we're talking about EQ, you'll be able to take that snare drum microphone, let's say, that input, and actually look for the tones that are affecting it negatively or affecting it positively, and work on those different frequencies. So, and Dave has these great courses explaining how to do that. I highly recommend checking out Dave's courses. I am a consumer of Dave's courses, and I've seen it change from, he was on a different platform at one time. Now he's on this wonderful new website that's laid out just so simply. And this is something I guess we'll talk about in the education portion, but Dave even does videos explaining how to buy his videos. So that's so smart and super helpful, because sometimes navigating somebody's online school or course, you're just like, how do I do this? Like, you're not sure how to even buy the stuff. So you've kind of laid it out in such a way that just makes it so simple. And that's, I guess, why it's home recording made easy. It's just made.
It is. I've changed platforms over the years, as you said, to make it as easy as possible. You don't even need to really watch the video. You could, but the site has been set up in a way, when you go to the training courses page, it's set up with beginner courses and a page for intermediate courses and advanced. So it's really easy to navigate. And if anyone ever has any questions, they can always email me, and I answer every single one of those emails personally within 2 days. There's no assistance. There's no third parties. When you email me, you're actually communicating with me, which doesn't happen in a lot of websites today.
That is true.
So if anyone has any questions, they can certainly hit me up, and I'd be glad to help them.
Yeah, and I have the link to your website in the description of this video. And by the way, I do a lot of online coaching and drum teaching via Zoom, and I actually booked Dave for a 1-hour Zoom call because I was working with a new PreSonus interface that PreSonus was nice enough to set me up with, and I was confused as to why a piece of their software wasn't working. And it just turns out that the one that I have doesn't communicate with that software anyway. It wasn't, but that's how Dave and I really got to speak personally, and I was skeptical. I emailed him and said, "Hey, do you think you'd want to do a Zoom session?" And he got right back to me, and we did it. I've contacted people before from the YouTube world and said like, "Hey, man, I would love to get a little bit more knowledge about what you're talking about. I would hire you for an hour for a consulting thing," and they never got back to me. And so, just so you guys know, you can book Uncle Dave for an hour on Zoom and get that one-on-one if it's something that's not really clear in the course, or if there's a specific issue that you're having. He's extremely knowledgeable, so he can always help you with that. By the way, Bob Sears' buddy Chip is here. And so Bob Sears has a band. Bob Sears is a drum student of mine. He's also in my Zoom hand technique workshop every Thursday. Bob is a great guy, and I've done some tech with Bob, teaching him some tech stuff and getting him set up on his new gear. And Chip is in Bob's band, and Chip's been checking out your courses.
Oh, cool.
So Chip says, "Thanks for inviting me, Bob, and good to see you, Uncle Dave." So Chip is one of your consumers, just so you know that. And Chip, if you have any questions while I have Dave on the show tonight, definitely field those questions. We are definitely here for that. Don O'Keefe, do you need to register for the webinar? Yes, there's a link in the description of this. And Don, as you know, if you just go to my website, as soon as you go onto my website, there's a pop-up that's going to come up. You can just hit the X, it'll go away, but it does say more information about the webinar right there. Click that, follow the link, and it'll take you there. And it's really a great value, what we're doing. It's super inexpensive, really, for what you're getting. $27 for 90 minutes of 2-on-1, kind of tutorials. So Dave and I will be both working on different aspects of the recording stuff, and hopefully between the two of us we can shed a lot of light on getting started with recording. So I think it's funny. I learned a little bit more about you tonight as well, that we were, even from a chronological standpoint, on a similar trajectory at one point. And my student Vincent LaRusso, who I don't think he's in here tonight, but he did the same exact trajectory. He went to my high school, and he did the same thing with getting into recording, getting into playing instruments. And so if you're in here, Vin, say hi, because I'd love you to meet Dave here. So, all right, if anybody has any questions, I'll check back with the chat in a moment. In the meantime, we're going to get back into our chat, my chat with Dave Vignola tonight. And when did it go from, so you got the studio running, and I know, I'm sure you went through many formations of gear and still do. I mean, you just bought an SSL board that I see in the background, that beautiful thing from England, I believe.
Yeah, we would be here for another 2 hours. If I talked to you about all the gear that I've had and gotten rid of over the years, this would be a week-long podcast.
What's funny? Like, we, as musicians, and we're all guilty of this. You buy a piece of gear, then you're like, I don't know, I don't think I need this anymore. And then you get a different piece of gear. Then maybe you sell an old piece of gear. And then later on you go, man, I wish I hadn't sold that. I really need that now. So you go through this craziness, right, of buying and replacing gear over the years. And then eventually you kind of get it really honed in to what you really need, right? And I think I'm in that place now where I don't buy extraneous gear ever. I have stuff that works really well. I only replace things if they break down or if there's an improvement, which of course happens continuously.
Sure.
But then in your case, you're exploring now going back to the SSL board, which is really exciting, and having outboard gear.
Yep.
And I want to get into that, but I do want to go through, how did we go from, okay, I'm doing the studio, recording clients now, to, you know what, maybe I'm going to start the knowledge worker age, putting together a course that people could buy. Like, this is, and for all you drummers out there, I mean, you can do this with your drum stuff, right? I mean, there's
absolutely, no question.
My good buddy Dave Weckl has an amazing online school, right, of videos where it's really his passive income. However, he's created passive in quotes because people put a lot of work into their videos and a lot of work into the course creation, but there's a lot of opportunities in this knowledge worker age, I like to call it, where we create course content. And how did you go from, okay, I'm running a home studio to building courses?
Yeah, I was running a home studio, bringing in clients, as you said. And that was kind of right around the time where, digital file sharing started and where the record industry started to change.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening was, and at the same time, I had, I did everything in the room that I'm sitting in now, bought a house, got married, and my daughter was born. And once that kind of happens, I decided having a bunch of strangers at my house every single weekend. And I had bands here every single weekend for 2 years because I was trying to break in. I was getting out of the live sound. I didn't want to be out all night. People said, wow, if I could record people here and I could be so much easier. And I started on that. And then once the music industry started to change and people didn't have money anymore because they weren't selling music, then the budgets became really small. And then I ended up turning into the little demo studio, just like what I used to do, where I, have to spend 13 hours working with a band to make a few $100. And I'm going, this is just not going to cut it. I don't want all these strangers in my home. And so I started to rethink, well, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do long term? The recording studio, as it were, the technology is getting better. Anybody can have recording equipment in their house now. I'm not as much in demand from a recording engineer as I maybe once was. So all these things were kind of happening simultaneously. At the same time, I had started a YouTube channel and I only had a couple of videos and maybe 50 subscribers. And I don't even know what the first few videos were. Something about working and mixing or doing something. And I left Pro Tools and was starting with Studio One, PreSonus Studio One. And in that, I had found I was having some issues learning Studio One and making the transfer. And I had found a person online that was kind of the Studio One guru, if you will, at the time. And I had reached out to that person and they got back to me. Oddly enough, I didn't think they would. Like you said, most people you reach out to don't get back to you, but this person did. And we hooked up on Skype and he was generous enough to help me with some of my issues. And we got to know each other and became friendly. And he checked out my YouTube video. And by the way, his name is Johnny Geib and he runs a website called The Home Studio Trainer. Really nice guy. Love him. And he saw one of my videos in one of our calls and he never charged me a penny. He always helped me for free because he was doing it as a hobby, not as a business. It's not his, that he does this for the love of it. He has a job, a real job, And so he had said, hey, Dave, I checked out this video. He goes, man, you really ought to create some kind of a training course. You're pretty good at this. And I thought, well, I'm not an educator. I'm not a teacher. I barely know what I'm doing, And no, he said, no, man, I think that you speak well on camera. You have a personality on camera. You can do this. And I never would have thought in a million years. It was not in my radar to do anything like that. I was thinking about maybe the studio thing was going to go away and I was going to have to go back to corporate America because there was just no more money in music. And I'm not going to go tour all over the world. I'm not a gigging musician at that level. So I said, oh, no, who's going to carry? So, well, look, I do a live stream. He did a live stream every week. And he said, I have a pretty good audience that shows up. And if you create something, I'll have you on as a guest, kind of like what we're doing tonight. And I'll introduce you to my audience and see if people want to check out your course. I said, okay. So I created a mixing course. It was called Mixing Made Easy at that time. There was no other courses. There was no home recording made easy. None of that stuff existed. And so I talked to my wife about it. She goes, try it. I figured, okay, I'll put this little stupid course together. Nobody's going to buy it. Who's going to buy this thing? I won't be able to give this away. Nobody knows me on a national level. I'm just a local guy here in Connecticut. Created the course. He introduced me to his audience and I put it up on sale on some website at the time that, you can sell digital courses, some third party that takes like 60% of your money and all that stuff. And yeah. I put it up there and I think I sold it for $10 because I thought, who's going to buy this? Who cares what I think about this stuff? He introduced me to the audience. And at the same time, I did not realize that person also had an inside track to people over at PreSonus. And so he introduced me, once he saw the course, he introduced me to at that time, the sales manager, who actually still works there. He was a much higher level person. His name is Rick Nofke, which you may know. You probably know Rick. And I got to know Rick and they really loved my course because I was the only one that had a course in Studio One, which at the time was a new DAW. They were coming onto the market. So PreSonus was interested in me, not because of maybe me, because I was showing off Studio One. And he said, you know what, Dave, I'll email our customers your link. And I'm like, oh, okay. Had no clue. A couple of days later, he emails this thing out. And on my phone, you know, when you get a sale from this thing, it would give you like a little notification, and, you know, the little bell would go off. And I tell this story that I was sitting, you know, with my wife, we're in the living room, we're watching TV or something, and my phone's going, you know, every 2 seconds, it's going ding, 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 and the bell's going off. And I'm looking at my phone, and it's going sold, sold, sold. And I'm like, what's this? I thought it was some kind of virus or some kind of spam. And it's saying, oh, it was like every 10 seconds I would sell another course, sell another course, sell another course. And I'm looking at, I'm going, this can't be right. So I log onto the website, and sure enough, I must have sold in 2 days a few hundred courses. And I was like, what? And I just could not believe it. I was just shocked. And that's how it started. And I looked at my wife, I said, you know what? Maybe this is something. She's going, you got to create what's the next course you're going to create? And so that's kind of how it started. And then we had to come up with a name. And my wife, you know, I said, you know, she says, well, home recording. And I don't know how we came up. She came up with the Made Easy. She's responsible for that. So I said, oh, home recording. And she said, well, what is it? And we talked. She goes, well, if it's for beginners and you're trying to help a new person getting into this, you got to make it so it's easy. And that's how it came to be. And then I searched out the domain name, and I could not believe homerecordingmadeeasy.com was available as a domain name. I couldn't believe it. You would think, you know, and I bought the domain name and started the first website, which looks nothing like the website today. Right. It looked like a child did it, the first website that I put together. And that's kind of how it started. And once I realized that the first course did so well, I said, okay, well, let me make another course. And then I made one on EQ, I think was the second course, and then compression, and then mastering. And it just started to snowball, and people kept buying it. And PreSonus was really supportive and helping me in the beginning, getting me some exposure. And I still have a great relationship with them today. They're still great people. I know Rick and talk to him fairly frequently. But between that, Johnny and PreSonus, they really introduced me to the world. And that's how I got started. And I just kind of refined it and kept improving it and building new courses and getting better at making the courses and upgrading the courses over time. And it just kind of snowballed. And I never would have thought, I don't consider myself an educator. I'm just an engineer and a musician. And I guess some people like what I do, and I resonate with people. And I guess maybe I have an easy way to explain something that seems complex, which I didn't realize I had that skill. I still don't even know that I do, but some people think I do, so it works.
Yeah, you do. And you know, the thing is this, I think that the way you explain things is, and the way that you get the point across is through repetition.
Right.
And so like, that's super important when so I teach drums. When you're teaching, especially beginners, you're repeating the fundamentals all the time. And you're really good at just taking your time and explaining it sort of in layman's terms. Like, you're not jumping 9 steps ahead where somebody's like, wait a minute, how do you get to that point? You're explaining things in a very methodical, logical order, which is easy to digest, and you're easy to listen to. So it's the personality and the voice. You know, you're like you seem like the average guy that is your buddy, and you can listen to him, and he's giving you advice. You know, it really has that feel, because I think genuinely that's who you are.
Yeah, I always tried to think of this as this. If you were in my studio with me and we were sitting together working on your music, how would I teach it to you? And that's kind of how I go about it. Yeah. I rarely there's almost never a script when I'm doing my videos or my courses. But when I do the courses, there's bullet points, as you know, I'm sure as you know, a layout to make sure I don't skip anything. But everything I do, and I mean everything, is right off the cuff. I don't pre-plan a lot of stuff because I don't want it to come across scripted. I want it to come across more genuine. Right. And that's kind of a double-edged sword. It's the same thing with my YouTube videos. There are a certain segment of my viewers that won't watch my videos because they're too long, because we live in a world today where everyone wants everything instant, and they want to learn the craft of recording and mixing in a 4-minute YouTube video, which is just not possible. I can't mix the song in 3 hours myself without trying to teach it to you. How can I teach it to you in 10 minutes? I can't. But I get sometimes called out because my videos are too long, or I say the same things over and over, even though it's done intentionally, as you mentioned. But it's just the way I do it. I just get on camera and I just pretend like we're here together, and I just talk and just do what I do, for better or worse. Some people love that style of teaching. Some people do not. And so it's just like, well, I can't make everybody happy, but you know, over the last 6 or 7 years, we've, you know, we continue to grow and become more successful. So it must be working, or else nobody would come and watch my videos and nobody would buy my training courses. So, you know,
Right, right. And it, you know, I think that it's a certain, you know, not everybody's content is for everybody. As you
right.
said, you know, it's not everybody's going to like what you do, and you kind of can't internalize that either, right? Because you just
Yeah.
have to do what you do. You can't go changing it because somebody's like, you know, calling you out on YouTube with some ridiculous comments. It's like, just go somewhere else if you don't like what I do. I think
Right.
it's great that you stay genuine, you stay to to the point of what it is you bring to the table, which is a very relaxed, very slowly, methodically explained content, which people need. You know,
Yeah.
if you're much more advanced and you've been doing this for a really long time, you're probably gonna look elsewhere, right? You're not. I mean, you do have advanced courses, but I'm
I
saying, like,
do.
you
Yeah,
know,
recently I've done some more masterclass stuff because over time, my hope was, and it's starting to blossom, which is how we get into the SSL and all that. That my whole thing was I wanted to create a curriculum that if you were just starting out, I could bring you right through just starting out, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and that
right?
there's going to be a certain segment of my student base that's going to graduate to more advanced stuff,
Yeah,
where now they're doing this at a more higher level. A lot of people will never get to that. A lot of people just want to, I just want to record my band's song and make it sound as good as it can. Perfect. I got those things for you.
yeah,
But there is a percentage of people that want to now take it to another level. So I have intermediate and advanced stuff where we don't talk about the basics. We talk about more pro level stuff because
right.
I'm also a mixing engineer. I mix with clients for records all over the world. So I can be very technical and show a lot of technical techniques. So home recording made easy is what it says it is
Right.
on the tin, but there's also something for everyone. And that's how, and now we're starting to graduate into more higher level stuff with a whole nother website for people that want to go more into that stage as well. So
Right.
I can take you right from the beginning all the way through a pro level engineer if that's what you want to do, or stop anywhere in the middle of that, you know, road wherever you feel comfortable. So
Yeah, and I love that that the courses, you have these little cheat sheets, so to speak,
yeah,
that you give with the course. So it's like when you download the video information, you get these little PDFs, and
mm-hmm,
those are really helpful. Like the little EQ frequency guide. You know,
yep,
that's a great thing, just as a quick, you know. For drummers, especially, you know, you have it broken down to snare drum, kick drum, toms, cymbals,
mm-hmm,
you know, so that you can easily look at what is that frequency talking to me about, you know. So I love the way that you have this supplementary material that works really well, and now with the SSL board, you
yeah,
know, I have to laugh. The first video, you and I had been speaking right as that video came out, and it's the delivery video. You had the truck outside your house
yep,
delivering the board and watching you bring it down the basement steps with, I think, your nephew holding
yep,
you up, pushing your back as you guys are carrying it down. And I'm
yep,
sitting there watching this video going like, "Oh, Dave, please don't fall down the stairs."
yeah,
And then
don't drop anything.
yeah, yeah.
Right,
And you uncrated it first in your garage and then brought
yeah,
it down to the basement.
yeah.
So it's really cool. Go check out the SSL videos that are on your channel. Now you have a new channel
Yeah, there's a
for
new
the
channel, and
SSL.
the reason for that is because as I bring more intermediate techniques and stuff into home recording made easy, especially on YouTube, where I started to introduce more hardware and some outboard gear way before an SSL, I started to notice that most of my audience at home recording made easy weren't watching any of those videos.
Yeah.
They weren't interested in that. And this is where, as a content creator, you really have to understand the audience that you got to, you know, you can't just create the things I want to create. I got to create the things that people want. And home recording made easy suggests that it's beginner, intermediate stuff. And as I started to bring more advanced stuff in, I realized people don't want that. They don't want that at home recording made easy. When I do the more basic stuff or plug in demos and shootouts and those kinds of things, they eat those videos up.
Right.
As soon as I bring in a $3,000 piece of hardware and hook it up to the rig, everybody tunes out.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I get it. So I said, well, how can I, because I've been doing this now for 7 years on YouTube, and home recording made easy is in its 7th year. I've created all the beginner intermediate stuff. I've just rebuilt all the courses from the ground up in the last 12 months to bring them to a higher level. there's not much more I can do in the beginner intermediate stuff without repeating myself and just trying to sell somebody something. And I'm not about that. So it's like, well, how do I reach another type of an audience? But I don't want to pollute the home recording made easy audience. And I don't want to force feed them things that they don't want.
Right.
So that's where I came up with the idea. Well, you know what? I'm interested personally as an engineer in analog. I want to work that and experience it for myself. And at the same time, I can teach it, but I really can't teach it at home recording made easy. They don't want it. So create another YouTube channel and that's what I did. So I created a YouTube channel called Mixing Music Analog, which really could be called Mixing Music Hybrid because we're still using a DAW and we're using an SSL, as you see, with outboard gear. And how do you fuse the two? For the person that is interested in that stuff, not that you have to go out and buy all that stuff because you don't, but just to show you a different kind of a workflow. So I built this YouTube channel about 2 months ago, and I wanted to start from before I even got the SSL. I did a video talking to people about what this whole thing is going to be. And as I started to order some of the gear and the cabling and things would start coming in, I would start doing videos. And then when the SSL came in, we did a whole, delivery video. And now we have videos on the whole setup from the time that you bring it into your studio. How do you hook up the cables? How do you get the thing routed? There's a whole lot to this that is way different than working in the box.
Yeah.
And we've been documenting that all the way and posting it on YouTube, a couple of videos a week. And we're in the process of doing that. So that's a whole nother way to now take people that maybe are graduating from home recording made easy, because I have some of those people and they want more. They've exhausted everything I have. And they're like, okay, what's next? This is what's next at Mixing Music Analog. If it's something you want to do, it doesn't mean you have to put $100,000 worth of equipment in your home, but maybe you just want to work in the box, but you want to add maybe a compressor to your stereo bus, or maybe you want to add a good set of hardware pre's so you can record your drums through good preamps and not the audio interface preamps or something along those lines. How do you do all that stuff? That's what Mixing Music Analog is all about. So it's really a continuation beyond home recording made easy. That's the way I'm kind of viewing it. And at the same time, it helps me spread my wings as an engineer. I'm not staying in the beginner stuff all the time. I'm moving to more advanced stuff and teaching that as well. And it helps me as an educator learn how to present these things in a better way. And so it's just another extension. It's another brand. And so we just started it about 2 months ago. So far, it's been really great. And there's going to be a whole lot more coming over at that channel. And what's great about it is that home recording made easy, nothing changes. We're still doing the same kind of videos, the same kind of course content. I'm not force feeding you things you don't want. If you're not interested in that kind of workflow, you don't have to come over there and visit it. I'm going to leave home recording made easy just the way it is and continue to feed that and continue to feed my new users that are coming in and my new beginners, because I love working with them. But this is just another way to expand to a different type of student wherever they are, if they're graduating and moving further on in their journey. That's all.
Yeah. I've seen some of the videos on the analog stuff. It's really interesting. I myself, work only in the box, but it's really interesting stuff, from the delivery and setup to you wiring it up and just really fun to watch. Even if you're just an audio nerd, like a lot of us, it's just really interesting to watch that stuff. So check out both of Dave's channels. I do want to just pop into the chat for 1 second.
Sure.
Steve Balgoyan said, Jim, I just ordered a Mac Mini today as per your specs. So congrats on the Mac Mini. I think it's a great choice for somebody who's getting a small home recording rig going or a online streaming rig. It's a powerful little computer. And, a Mac Mini with a Focusrite 18i20 and a few microphones, man, you'll be cooking with grease really quick. And Bob Sears said that he likes the way you teach, that it's getting all of his guys through this learning curve. And Chip, who's in the Bob camp, said that he's definitely learned a lot from Dave, particularly like it that when he runs into a snag, he doesn't edit it out.
No, I don't.
So he learned the whole resolution process too, which is true. I love that. I think everybody should really do that. Don't, edit out the mistakes. I think it's great to see, or when you run into something that you're like, wait a minute, why is this not working? It's great to see that process. It's part of the teaching. It's part of the learning. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. That's one of the things that when I started getting into course recreation, I said, well, how am I going to be different? Because there's a lot of other people in this space. And what am I going to do that's different? So I went out and bought all the other courses and I watched them all. And there were two things that I noticed right away. And they're all great. I don't say anything negative about anyone. I think everyone has a different teaching style, and whoever resonates with you as an instructor is who you should go support.
right.
But there were two areas that I saw that were lacking. One, most of the courses that you would buy would be maximum 2 hours. Most of them were an hour to 90 minutes long. Two, I never saw one of them for less than $100.
Yeah.
So they were pretty pricey for with not a whole lot of content. And three, most of the content that I would see, they would gloss over the topics. They never got down into the weeds. You never saw how it was done. You saw after it was done. So if it was a mixing course, they would show you a mix that was already done. And then they would kind of walk you through it and show you the highlights, but they never showed you in real time, how is this done? They would teach you what they were doing, but they never taught you why they were doing what they were doing. So the way and this is why my courses are so long. My average course, I think EQ Made Easy, is probably the shortest course, is like 3.5 hours. My mixing courses are anywhere from 8 hours to 16 hours, depending on which one you pick up.
Yeah.
Because I show you in real time. I don't usually I don't even know if it's a mixing course, what the song really sounds like, other than I've listened to a snippet of it to know, okay, that's a track that I can use in this course. But I have not listened to it. I have never mixed it. I have no idea what kind of problems we're going to have. And it's part of that kind of you sitting in the studio with me. I just hit record and we learn together. And if there's something that comes up that's weird, I fumble around and figure it out, and I don't edit that stuff out. It's very rare that any of my courses have any edits in them, unless there was some kind of real technical issue. But most times you see it just as you would if you were sitting here. And that's why they're so long. That's why the courses are longer than most. So my whole thing was I wanted to show you in real time from start to finish how it's done, why I'm doing what I'm doing without all the fancy edits in there, and also to give you, the most bang for the buck you will find anywhere. I say this all the time, and I love all my colleagues in this space. I challenge anyone to go find a recording or a mixing course that gives you as much content that I do at any price point. I don't care what they are. And I'm still, even today, probably the cheapest guy on the block by a lot. Yeah. And it's not even about price, because if you find the right instructor, you'll pay 10 times what the person's asking if you're really going to learn something. It's not about the price, but for the bang for the buck, you won't find anything better than what I offer. And I take a lot of pride in that, because these courses, as Jim knows, takes an enormous amount of time to put together. And so I want to make sure that when you buy my course, whichever one you buy, that you walk away from going, I got way more than what I paid for. And that's really what I try to do, because I don't want you to feel like, oh, I just watched this course and now I got to go buy another course because he didn't teach me half of what I was supposed to learn. There's
a lot of content out there that's like that. And I have to say, the one thing, like with the mixing course, it's so great. You download the stems, and Dave has the stems on his system, and you're downloading it onto your system. Mm-hmm. And step by step, you're talking people through exactly what you're doing so they can do it as well. And I love that sometimes you'll say, if you don't understand what's happening, stop the recording, rewind it, and watch this part again until you get it. Like listening to hearing compression. You always say, like, stop it, go back until you can hear it, and go through those steps again. And it's smart, and it makes it really engaging that somebody's actually downloading the exact same tracks that you have, and you're showing in real time how it's affecting what it sounds like as you do these things. And that's super important, that someone who's a novice can really understand it as they go through it. So
yeah, the audio files, I think, are the key thing, that you have the same audio so we can work on it together, so you can follow me step by step. And I try to also use a set of tools that if I'm using Studio One and you're using Pro Tools, you'll still be able to learn in the course. It doesn't matter. Right. I try to teach these things that the digital audio workstation or the DAW has no bearing on anything, or even the plugins. Most times in the beginners courses, I'll use the stock plugins. So whether I use the stock EQ in PreSonus and you use it in Logic, or someone else uses it in Pro Tools, it's the same fundamentals. When we get into the more advanced courses where we're using a lot of third-party plugins, we do a lot of comparisons between why does the Neve EQ plugin sound different from the stock plugin? And we walk through all the mechanics of that And if you don't have the same plugin as me on the screen, it's okay, but you'll get the understanding. And then you also get an opportunity to see me demo a lot of these things. So you could go out and say, hey, I like the way he used that and the way it sounds. Maybe I'll go check that out, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really, it could be used with any DAW, any plugins. It doesn't really matter what you have. You'll learn something from the courses.
Absolutely. So Dave and I are doing our webinar next week on Friday, August 27th at 1 p.m. EDT. So that way, if it's, if you're in another time zone and it's problematic, if you register for the course, you are going to get video files. However, I encourage you to be there in real time so you can ask questions, and we're going to be happy to explain things, and there will be some little bonus items that we'll be talking about when we get into the course. And now I'm going to ask you some questions that are unrelated to recording.
Okay, cool.
So, favorite pizza in Connecticut? What's the best pizza in Connecticut?
Pepe's.
Where's Pepe's?
It's in New Haven. It's probably 15 minutes from my house. They're world famous. So Pepe's Pizza is the best pizza I feel in Connecticut.
And what is your favorite topping on that?
Pepperoni.
Pepperoni from Pepe's. You heard it here. Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite? Are you a coffee drinker?
Yes.
Okay. Coffee. What do you like on the coffee front?
I love Starbucks coffee, but I don't go there a lot because, I don't live too close to one. But when I do go there, I like the, the white chocolate mocha with whipped cream, which is like drinking a dessert. I don't even know that that's coffee. But if it's just a regular cup of coffee, I like hazelnut coffee.
Hazelnut. So you're a hazelnut drinker. And at home, what are you making it with? A Keurig or something like that? Or
no, just a regular old, old school Mr. Coffee.
Mr. Coffee. I've elevated my coffee habit into the espresso machine realm. So I got one of those DeLonghi pressurized machines. So it has 7 atmospheres of pressure. It actually makes real espresso. So I've gotten really into having espresso. Wow. So I am a coffee head as well. I do have a Mr. Coffee machine as well. Is there a favorite adult beverage to speak of?
Yeah, I like, when I do drink an adult beverage, Sam Adams is probably my favorite. Beer. And it could be anything. It could be anything, the seasonal stuff, Oktoberfest. I love Sam Adams. Okay.
First album you ever bought with your own money?
Vinyl album that I bought with my own money was Def Leppard's Pyromania.
Whoa.
And I still remember the day that I bought it. I forgot how old it was, 1982. So I would have been 12 or 11, whatever it is. And I remember walking down to the music store, which, probably 15 miles from my house with my sister, with my allowance money, to a store called Merle's Record Rack. It was a little privately owned shop, to buy Def Leppard's Pyromania. That was my first vinyl album that I bought with my own money.
Wow. Mine was Toys in the Attic by Aerosmith.
Oh, love it. Yeah. I'm a product of the 70s. Rock is my favorite rock. I was when I was a teenager, I was into the 80s hair metal thing because that's what I grew up in. But my favorite stuff is all the stuff from the late 60s through the 70s.
So favorite band, if you had to pick one?
Led Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin. Okay, cool. Well, favorite Zeppelin album then?
Physical Graffiti, and then followed by maybe Zeppelin 4.
Hells yeah. Physical Graffiti has so many great tunes on it. Yeah. Oh my God. I actually, when I was a kid, I dropped something on my Physical Graffiti vinyl and cracked off the edge of it. So the first tune on each side couldn't be played. That was awful. Favorite drummer as a non-drummer, even though you play some drums, but as a non-drummer, who is your favorite drummer?
Probably John Bonham. Isn't that the standard answer? Because I just love Led Zeppelin.
Definitely.
John Bonham is, it's probably. And you know who else I like who's a little bit more new? He doesn't play drums much anymore, but I love Dave Grohl.
Dave Grohl is great.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge Nirvana fan, oddly enough, but I love the Foo Fighters. I know he's a singer and a guitar player, and I love Taylor Hawkins, his drummer as well. A lot of personality.
Similar in their playing a little bit. Too.
Yeah, and I love they've always done they do some cover band thing that they do. I think they call it the Chevys or something where Dave Grohl and Hawkins, and then they have all kinds of guest players. They play all 70s rock tunes, Cheap Trick and Led Zeppelin and stuff.
Yeah.
And Taylor is as good is a great singer as well. He'll come out and sing songs, and Dave will go back and play drums, and I really dig when they do that. So I just love the spirit of those two guys. But I would say probably John Bonham is my favorite drummer, just being such a Zeppelin person. But I'm sure most drummers would probably say that,
including a lot of jazz drummers that I'm friends with who always cite John Bonham as a big influence. And I had Carmine Appice on the show recently, and he talked about being out on tour with Led Zeppelin and actually getting to sit in with Led Zeppelin, like crazy stories. So if you haven't heard the Carmine Appice episode, it's on YouTube in the archives.
Nice.
Unedited, it's up there. So so that definitely is a standard answer, and I would highly agree with the John Bonham answer. So I think I'm going to wrap it up at this point, and we're going to go back to our lives, and you can see Dave and I next week in our webinar if you like, on Thursday, August 27th at 1 p.m. EDT. I thought it was really great hearing about you, the person behind the stuff, because I think people are interested, and I think what you've done is an incredible service to people. Even though it's a business, I can tell that you're passionate about it, that you love what you do, and that you really are trying to give something great to people, that it's not all about, as other creators can seem, that it's all about the business. It really, I feel the genuine, that you put your heart and soul into it. So that's really important to me and to all of our listeners. So.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, I do. It's, it is a business, and there is a lot of work, and everyone just sees the end product. They really don't see what goes into the amount of hours, but I love doing it. And I love helping people. And it's really a joy. I get emails all the time and phone. I don't know how people get my phone number, but somehow they get my phone number. I've had calls from South Africa, from New Zealand, Iceland, people all over the world just call me just to say they bought a course and they just wanted to say thank you. And I was just like, whoa,
wow.
Sometimes, as you know, and some of your listeners may know, when you're in your studio and you're here, like right now, where it just feels like you and I are talking, and you lose sight of how many people are actually watching your videos and watching your courses and the reach that you have. And so when someone in New Zealand gets one of my courses, I'm just like, well, it's just really great. So it really is really great to hear, the heartfelt feelings of some people, and you're touching lives in that way, which is way more important to me. And I never would have thought that getting into this, that means more to me than, like you said, just making a buck. I mean, we all have to make a living and eat, but
right.
That's not if you're in the music business, unless you're a famous rock star, if you're in the music industry, you don't get into this just because of the money. But you would make far more money per hour. Go and work a real job. You do this for the love of it, and in our case, from an education point of view, because I love to help people, and it's really, I really love it. So I welcome those emails and those phone calls. Although I don't know how they get my phone number, but somehow they dig up my phone number.
And by the way, speaking of New Zealand, Kit from New Zealand has registered for our course on Thursday.
Oh, cool.
So we have New Zealand and definitely England attending. A few people from England that are students of mine as well. So yeah, man. So I hope everybody enjoyed my hang with Dave Vignola tonight, and definitely check out our upcoming webinar. But check out Dave's YouTube channels, both of them, and Dave's courses at homerecordingmadeeasy.com, and the new YouTube channel with all the analog stuff, which is called what again? What's the
Mixing Music Analog is the YouTube channel, and then there's Home Recording Made Easy.
There it is. So thanks for hanging, everybody. I'm gonna wrap it up, let Dave get back to his family, and I'm gonna roll the titles, and we'll see you on the next one, everybody, and see you Thursday night for the Hand Technique Workshop. Bye, everybody.
Bye.